Today, I'll be speaking with Leopoldo Hernández Romano about the long-term impact of working remotely. Hernández Romano focused on one specific aspect. By the time they'll return to their physical offices in the next 6 to 12 months or so, law firms will have the know-how and infrastructure to comfortably have some of their lawyers working from home, and possibly part-time. That in turn will make client file staffing more flexible and possibly more economical. Welcome to Law Firm Weekly. It's really good to have you here. Leopoldo Hernández Romano is the managing partner of Kerma Partners, leading the practice for Hispanic markets. Based in Mexico City and Miami, Leopoldo primarily advises law firms on strategic planning and implementation, organizational structure, partner and attorney compensation, as well as corporate governance issues. But before we start our conversation, Leopoldo, I'd like to share an interview with Tom Friedman, the noted New York Times journalist and author. Here he's interviewed on CNBC just a few days ago, and he's expressing his opinion about what he calls creative destruction as the result of this pandemic.
Yeah, I think we're on the cusp of an era of massive creative destruction, the likes of which we've never seen.
What industries do you think get destroyed in the process? Where is the downside of the creative destruction going to hit?
Well, two that are just so obvious is one is how and where we work. Because I can tell you about the New York Times. I mean, we're not going back to the office, they've told us, at the earliest until January 2021. We've been putting out this gigantic newspaper every day with virtually no one in the office. And I don't know exactly what that's going to mean for the post-COVID era, but it's going to mean a different way of us working. I think those are the two ripest around education and where and how we work.
So obviously he's focusing on a couple of areas, one of which is of greater interest to us here, which is how and where we work and the effect it might have, generally speaking, not the least of which on law firms. So now I wanted to take a step back and ask you, do you believe that this is a major, even massive inflection point for law firms? And if so, why?
I think it's a massive inflection point for the market, for people, for the environment, for the world. I think that, first of all, we are facing a crisis that we were not able to be foreseen, which came out from a movie. It's a great shock that came from a moment. In 2 months, our lives have already changed. So conservative industry, such as the legal industry, it's a major change, Shai. And I think that we were not ready as an industry for a shock like this. On the other hand, we see that the professionalism and the structures that firms have been building, the way that the teams are structured, the way that partners work, the way that they coordinate, have been able to diminish many of the effects that some other industries were not able to be handling because of their own processes.
So Friedman is talking about the huge impact on how we work, or rather, where are we going to work from? Is this a clue to, or more than just a clue, on how this will affect law firms as well?
I think it is. But first, I would like to begin saying that we cannot consider that what we are facing right now is home office. What we're facing right now, it's a lockdown. Home office is a completely different story, because when we are under home office, you can still going out to the gym, you can still go out with your friends, you can still go out to a meeting, you can still travel. This is not what we're facing. So we are in the extreme right now. So things that law firms should be understanding is that this is not reality. This is not normality. We will not be able to come into that one. And I agree with Friedman that everything is on hold until we get a vaccine and that population can start getting that vaccination and it's working.
So in the longer term, let's say that we're going to have a vaccine sometime next summer. It's just an assumption. There's all kinds of opinions around it, but let's just assume that there's going to be mass vaccines that are available. Fingers crossed, absolutely. But sometime in the future, we will come to a certain sense of normality. But what lingers? What stays? And how does it affect law firms in their longer term thinking around how they're being managed, how they're managed their staff, how they're managing their expenses, and of course, how does it all translate to how they work with their clients?
Good. Well, first, I would like to say that law firms have two major expenses. One, it's salaries, and the other is real estate. If we follow what we just heard on the interview, that where and how we work would be impacted, law firms would be able to start rethinking the way that they structure their office. I don't think that all law firms will be going from home office. There's no way. One thing that we have learned around the pandemic is that teams need to be together. And in order to be that the culture prevails among the firm, you need to be together, you need to see each other. But I think that something that we learned out from the pandemic is that flexibility is possible, that home office is a reality. Thus, this can be changing the environment. First, the way that law office has been designed. I think that many firms would be going back, those which are in the position to be reviewing the size of the spaces that they are using this time, and the way that this has been structured. This can be changing. Maybe we'll not be forgiving about the offices, but we'll be coming to something much more efficient, much more technology based, just same size for everybody. I don't think that we will be forgiving, for instance, for the conferences. The conference rooms will still be very relevant for attending clients, for providing conferences for clients, for the teams that can be get together. On the other hand, when we're thinking about flexibility, that offers a lot of options for the law firms. First, this thing that people now, senior partners, know that their team can be working wherever they are. So this will be providing much more flexibility on the way that you handle the talent, the way that you delegate the talent. The other thing that I can see is that you can also become flexible on the way that you integrate the teams. What I mean when I say integrate the teams, that you don't have all of the staff, all of the legal staff working under the same terms. Not everybody has to be under the same kind of hours per month goals, but you can be, maybe you can be thinking about some staff which are under much more flexible. Maybe let's think that for a second, the firm which has established 150 billing hours per month. I'm not speaking about days, I'm not speaking about hours, I'm just thinking about productivity. 150 billed hours per month, but maybe you can have part of the staff we just are under an arrangement of 80 hours per month. And then you can be getting like an option with them. You pay for the fixed 80 hours. It doesn't matter if you provide them the work or not. If you're not able to fulfill as a firm the 80 hours and those attorneys, it's your fault. There cannot be rolled to the next month. There's no way to be doing this. But if you are paying fixed for those 80 hours, you get the option, and that would be a negotiation with each of the attorneys where you can get extra hours. Let's say that in some cases they tell you, I can be warranting you capped 30 hours more, and people who can tell you, we can be thinking about few months per year, I can be going another 100 more hours. And then law firms would be paying those extra hours with a big smile, and lawyers would be receiving those extra hour payment with big smiles. While law firms would be receiving this with big smile because their fixed cost won't be affected.
So is all of this going to translate, bottom line, and let's put aside for a second real estate, because if there's going to be some more efficiency around the utilization of spaces that law firms have, then clearly they can negotiate I don't know, maybe 20% less office space, and that obviously can translate into some big savings. But let's go back to this model you've just described. Do you think that this is going to save the firm money, and will that translate to how they structure engagements with their clients?
I think that this will have to be faced in order to be much more accountable with the clients. This would be much more accountable with the clients, maybe adjusting the way that you are pricing your services, being much more flexible to use uh, alternative pricing structures for the clients, and at the other time also being able to be reviewing the way that you are paying the staff. Not everybody will have, as I mentioned before, will be having the same kind of salaries, the same kind of arrangements, but also your career plans need to be flexible. So maybe lawyers can be jumping from one side or the other. Let's just think for a moment, a young mother, which their kids, they have, let's say, 3 and 1. At that moment, maybe 80 hours is more than enough for her, and she can be handling 20 or 30 hours more per month. But maybe in 3 years, once they start going to school, she can be providing and changing the scheme, either going back to the 150 or just getting the margin of those, instead of the 30 hours, moving up to 60 hours more per month in case needed. So that flexibility will also have impact on the way that you handle the income, the revenue. Sorry.
Oh, no, no, that's great. So maybe the last question I have for you will jump out for a second from discussing those issues and their impact on how the firm will manage its resources, and talk a little bit about transparency for the clients. And I guess what I'm talking about is the idea that people are now seeing as much more realistic of sharing even more information with clients regarding the structure of a given file that they're working on. So people are talking about collaboration systems that are much more transparent than they were. The idea of transparency have been around for a long time, and it's been politically correct to try and establish those kind of systems. And not just politically correct, firms implemented such extranets and so on and so forth. But I'm wondering if this change now of being used to working through intermediate electronic systems, such as collaboration systems, is there any chance that firms will start changing how they're sharing and what they're sharing with their clients about the structure of a given file and its progress?
I think they will have to. I think that is part of what I just mentioned about the accountability. I think transparency is just one of the elements that we think when we're discussing accountability in front of the clients. Clients need to feel first that they are under control of all the work which is performed by the law firms. They're under control of the budget, on how much it's invested on the time, how much the cost, which we see that cost has been going less, they're going down compared to what we used to see 15 years ago, but also that you can be controlling who is performing what. Law firms have to make sure that work is being done in the lower level possible without impacting the value for the client.
I think we hit on a really fascinating topic here, Leopoldo, and thank you very much for shedding some light on some of the inner workings of the changes we're going to foresee or you're foreseeing for the next 12 or more months. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much, Sai. It's my pleasure.